Hey guys, Fifi Mangaka here, and today we're going to be talking about the dreaded self-insert. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of self-insert that's so plain and so nondescript that they can be anyone, an intentional literary decision. I'm talking about the self-insert that's you, the writer. The character that no matter how much you deny it, you know you wrote it to be a fictional version of yourself. They're hated, and rightfully so. Many times, self-inserts aren't written well and tend to just be wish fulfillment rather than a fully fleshed out and complex character. However, self-inserts can be good, and maybe even interesting characters in their own right, so long as you do these three things. Number 1. Give them faults as well as perfections. One of the biggest criminal offenses with self-insert characters is that they are way too perfect. They can do anything. They're strong, they always make the right decisions, and this tends to be exactly what turns audiences off. It's boring to read a story or a comic where the protagonist never seems to come up against any difficulty and seemingly glides through their journey with ease. It's completely unrelatable. And when the audience can't find something to latch onto and understand, well, that's a recipe for disaster. For example, I was browsing around on YouTube one day and found an author on WriterTube that finally released their own work, something that their audience had been waiting for a very long time. They narrated the story, they had some illustrations to go with it, it was super well put together and really, really nice. I don't really have much context about this YouTuber and didn't really know what I was getting into, but I kind of enjoyed it and I thought it was really good. However, when I went to the comments and scrolled to see what their audience thought about it, everybody in the comments was pointing out how they just knew that main protagonist, well, that character was a self-insert. The way they described their hair, how beautiful they are, how perfect, the career choice, everything aligned with who the YouTuber was themselves, and the audience did not like it. It didn't go over well with them at all. And this made me think about one of the reasons why self-inserts are so widely disliked. So, my thought on that is if you're writing a self-insert character, one big thing you should do is give that character as many faults as they have perfections. This character is presumably based on you, right? And surely you've gone through some interesting challenges in life that will make for a really compelling character. So throw those things in there. Make this character have to deal with the sinuous nature of life that you have to. Don't just write them to feel and experience what you wish you could. Help them grow by making them fight the same battles that you have. And because you've gone through it, it'll make writing those events, the traits, and the features so much more authentic to the audience. And maybe they won't even recognize that this character is a self-insert at all. And this leads us right into our next point about writing self-inserts, the dreaded Mary Sue and Gary Stu's trope. Number 2. You can make a good self-insert character by avoiding the dreaded Gary Stu and Mary Sue trope. So if you're not familiar with what these tropes are, the Mary Sue and Gary Stu are terms that are often used to describe characters who come across as overly perfect, flawless, and essentially unrelatable, similar to what we talked about in the first point. These characters usually disrupt the story's immersion because they seem way too idealized. They're just way too distant from what we really experience in life as humans. So how do you ensure that your self-insert doesn't fall into this trap? What I think you need to do is take yourself out of the idea that this character needs to be perfect. And how we do that is erasing the need for wish fulfillment in our self-insert. I think one of the main reasons why we make self-inserts to begin with is because we have an idealized version of ourselves that we want to see through in a story that we create. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I do think it's a little selfish on the part of the writer. Our readers don't really know us, and so that translation of the wish fulfillment doesn't usually get across as well. I think it's more of an exercise in our own self-improvement than it is creating an entertaining story for the audience. So if you're making a self-insert character, you have to embrace the idea that perfection oftentimes in fantasy and fictional storytelling is very dull. It's usually the flaws and the imperfections that make characters super interesting. So in order to make that for your own character, reflect on the things you've gone through. Your self-insert character should embody all of those aspects, the weaknesses, the doubts, the moments of failure. If you do this, you can create a character that your audience can actually empathize with. Let's consider a scenario where we're deciding to incorporate a self-insert into our story. Maybe it's a slice of life story about an artist who has some doubts about the works that they're going to create and publish out for everyone else to read. This character could encapsulate the challenges that the author faced in their own creative journey. Maybe the character initially grapples with self-doubt or creative roadblocks. Maybe they think think everyone will reject their work and not like it, mirroring things you may have gone through as well. We don't want to just create a character that creates a bestseller and becomes a multimillionaire and then makes a movie series about their work. That's the Mary Sue. That's the part of that character that is the wish fulfillment that we wish for ourselves. But if we show all of those dark and nitty-gritty aspects of creating and the things that you actually have gone through, you can speak to it with some authenticity. And a character that can show those flaws and that dark side of the pursuit of your goals, the more you can do that in an effective manner, the less possible that they'll be a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu. So if you do want to go on the journey of creating a self-insert for your own story, this is a key point to avoid the Mary Sue and Gary Stu trope. So for the third and final point for creating a good self-insert character, I think you should base that character on believable dynamics and situations. So for this one, it's actually a funny story how I came across this idea. I was reading an interview of Kentaro Miura, the creator of Berserk, and he was describing how he came up with the characters Guts and Griffith. Everybody knows these iconic characters and their dynamic. And I was really intrigued to see that in the interview, Miura mentioned that Guts is sort of modeled after himself and Griffith is modeled after one of his friends. Now, I would stay very far away from that friend if I were Miura, but it got me to thinking. The reason why the emotional dynamic between these two characters is so strong and so believable and so real is because he modeled it after his own relationships and his own life experience with friends of his, that rivalry dynamic, that admiration dynamic that Guts and Griffith have, or had, depending on what part you are in the series. And this is a really key point to self-inserting. It's actually one of the unspoken strengths of self-insert characters. You can write characters and have this extremely powerful reference material that's your own life and your own experiences with people in your life. So contemplate the relationships between your self-insert character and other characters. Just like in real life, we have friends and foes, we have mentors and allies. You can attach those relationships to that character that you create as a self-insert. That really can drive the plot forward and reveal various facets of your character's personality. It's just this extra effort of detail that is put into the self-insert that can make them a lot better than just everything that we wish they were. And self-inserts, they're not just protagonists that are you. Just like in the case of Guts and Griffith, they could be characters of people that you know. They could be versions of people that you admire or people that you had some squabbles or beefs with in the past. And all of that vibrance, the actuality of the vibrance of these people will really come through and create some really interesting and insightful characters in your own work. And I personally think this is a power of self-insert characters. And that leads me to the last and final point about self-insert characters, which is actually a Fifi rant. And it leads into the title of this video, What's Wrong with Self-Insert Characters? I actually think there's power in making self-insert characters. Just like the third point highlights how when you use a self-insert that's based off of not only yourself, but friends and foes and everything in between, you can create really powerful dynamic interactions between those characters. That is something that if you didn't have that experience, maybe it'd be a lot harder to portray that in an authentic way that really speaks to your audience. This is a power, I think. I don't really think that it's something to look at negatively. I think there's a really big point here, that word I kept saying, wish fulfillment. I think with self-insert characters, writers tend to do the wish fulfillment, which makes them so hateable. It's like, let me make this character everything that I wish I was. And we may enjoy that, reading our own stories. It may make us feel good. We may love these characters, but the audience who doesn't know you that deeply may be like, oh my goodness, another Mary Sue protagonist, another Gary Stu protagonist, So I think if you can avoid that and you can really speak to the more natural and authentic aspects of life and what you know, it really brings a much bigger power to your story overall. If we look at our lives as a reference for our characters, the things that we've been through, and we could translate that to them, then self-inserts, I believe, could be just a little more interesting overall. So friends, that's my spiel. That's my opinion on self-insert characters. I don't think they're wholly bad. I think you can write them well. I think they can add a lot to your story, and they can help you speak to some aspects that are maybe a little bit hard to pull out from your imagination. So let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you just absolutely hate self-inserts no matter what? And also, something I'm really interested to know what your thoughts are. Can you tell? Can you tell when characters are self-inserts? Or is it something that you feel like you never know when a character is a self-insert? These are all interesting questions that I'd love to know your thoughts on. Leave them in the comments below, my friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.